In the vast halls of history, where golden thrones stood under towering ceilings and jeweled crowns gleamed under candlelight, not all royal births were met with celebration and joy. In the kingdoms of centuries past, where the bloodline of a monarch was guarded with almost sacred devotion, a child's birth was more than a personal family event. It was a political moment, a national statement, and a symbol of the dynasty's strength. But when a royal child was born with physical or cognitive differences, including conditions now understood as Down syndrome, the whispers began almost instantly. Courtiers, advisors, and even relatives would trade glances, their faces betraying the same unspoken question: what would this mean for the royal line? In an age when medical understanding was minimal and superstition often shaped decisions, such a birth could be viewed as an omen, a divine message, or even a curse. These beliefs were not born out of cruelty alone, but from the deeply rooted fears of instability and the loss of perceived perfection in the royal image. In the privacy of their chambers, monarchs faced an impossible choice: acknowledge the child publicly and risk court intrigue, or hide the truth behind closed doors. Some rulers sought to shield their children from public gaze, sending them to remote estates under the care of loyal attendants. Others allowed them to remain in the palace, but only within the most private quarters, away from the grand feasts and formal ceremonies that defined royal life. And so, the fate of these children was often sealed at birth, not because of their own deeds, but because of the heavy weight of a crown they never asked to wear. In the world beyond the palace walls, life was equally harsh for those born with differences, but for a royal child, the stakes were far greater. Dynasties relied on strong heirs to lead armies, forge alliances, and command respect among nobles and foreign courts. The royal image was tied to ideals of strength, beauty, and authority, leaving little room for vulnerability. When a child was born with traits that set them apart, their existence could become a closely guarded secret. Historical records, carefully curated by court scribes, might omit their names entirely, as though they had never existed. In some cases, their lives were reduced to quiet days in hidden chambers, their companions a small group of attendants sworn to silence. Yet not all stories were filled with isolation. Some monarchs defied the expectations of their time, choosing love over image, allowing these children to remain within the family circle, showered with care even if kept away from the political stage. But such kindness was rare, and often came at a price. Behind the walls of great castles, these young princes and princesses lived lives that were both privileged and profoundly lonely, surrounded by luxury, yet denied the freedom to be fully seen. Every decision about their future was weighed against the unyielding demands of statecraft, and in this calculation, personal happiness often came last. Their lives became a quiet reminder that even in the most powerful families, human vulnerability could not be erased by wealth or title. Across different kingdoms and centuries, the treatment of royal children with Down syndrome varied, but patterns emerged. In some European courts, they were raised with gentleness but hidden from public life entirely. In others, especially in regions where superstition ran deep, their births could cause fear among nobles who believed such events foretold political upheaval or divine displeasure. Royal advisors, ever protective of the dynasty's image, would suggest sending the child to a distant estate, often under the care of religious institutions. There, away from the constant gaze of the court, they might live quietly, surrounded by gardens and books, cared for but rarely visited by their parents. In rare but powerful cases, however, a royal family embraced their child openly, challenging the norms of their time. These moments stand out in history as acts of quiet defiance, proof that love could sometimes outweigh the iron demands of tradition. Yet even then, the child's life was carefully managed, their interactions with the outside world limited, their name absent from treaties, portraits, and public events. The palace was both a place of safety and a gilded cage, offering comfort while denying the right to be seen as a full member of the royal story. For these children, fate was often written not by their own will, but by the shadows of politics, image, and fear that hung heavy over every decision. For the people of the kingdom, news of such children rarely reached their ears. Royal households controlled the flow of information with precision, releasing only what they wished the public to know. Rumors might drift through taverns and marketplaces, carried by former servants or distant relatives, but without official acknowledgement, they remained whispers. The rare occasions when a royal child with Down syndrome appeared in public were often fleeting and carefully orchestrated, perhaps during a festival or a religious ceremony, and always in a way that softened or obscured their differences. To the wider world, they became figures of mystery, spoken of in hushed tones, their true lives hidden behind the heavy curtains of palace secrecy. Yet for those who knew them personally, nannies, tutors, attendants, they were simply children, with the same laughter, curiosity, and need for affection as any other. In private gardens, they might play games, explore the palace grounds, or listen to stories told by trusted companions. In these moments, far from the gaze of politics, their lives could be filled with joy. But as they grew older, the gap between their private reality and the public image of the royal family only widened. The knowledge that their place in history would be hidden or diminished was a silent burden they carried, even if they did not fully understand why. Today, with modern understanding and greater compassion, the fate of such children is very different. Yet the stories from the past remain a window into a world where image often mattered more than truth, and where love was forced to navigate the demands of power. Looking back, these histories challenge us to reconsider the values that shaped the lives of kings and queens, and to recognize the quiet resilience of those who lived in the shadows of the throne. Though their names may be absent from official chronicles, their presence shaped the private lives of royal families in ways history books rarely admit. They remind us that behind the grand portraits and elaborate ceremonies were real families, complex, flawed, and bound by the same human emotions as anyone else. The lives of these children, often hidden yet deeply significant, stand as silent testaments to the enduring struggle between tradition and compassion. And while we may never know the full stories of many, we can honor them by telling what little we do know, ensuring that the world remembers that even in the most gilded palaces, humanity could not be erased. Their fate, darkened by the politics of their time, also shines a light on how far we have come, and how important it is never to return to those shadows.